Strings. Strings are probably the most used data type in JavaScript, maybe even more than numbers or booleans or others. And I think this is because almost every interchange that happens between JavaScript and HTML or CSS or HTTP is done with strings. So you set a string, you get a string, strings are everywhere. So it's really important to understand strings to really get them. And in this presentation, I'm going through the very basics of strings, so you'll have a solid foundation to build on. It's important to mention that this is an active presentation. It requires you to have your code editor handy and try out some examples. So I'll just get mine here. I have my exercises folder and I'm going to create some files for strings. And just for fun, I'm creating them in the terminal. Touch strings HTML and touch strings JS. Now we have them. Let's close this again. HTML. And always remember to change document to something else. It's a good habit. And script will link to our strings script. Yes. And in that we start with use strict. So now we are ready to play with strings. Strings are covered in chapter 5.3 of JavaScript info. So if you go to the JavaScript info webpage and scroll down to chapter 5.3, and you can read that and get all of the info in this presentation and a lot more details and different explanations, maybe even better explanations, who knows. You've probably used strings a lot already in JavaScript, but just for the sake of it, let's start from the very beginning. A string is a piece of text. It can also be digits, but unless we do type conversion, those digits aren't interpreted as a number and can't be used in calculations. You know that. You try to add one string to another and they get concatenated. In JavaScript, we have three different ways of creating strings or declaring them. We could use double quotes here, quotation marks, before and after a string to encapsulate it. Or we can use single quotes, also known as apostrophes, to mark the beginning and the end of a string. And finally, a fairly new one, we can use these backticks, they are often called, to denote the beginning and the end of a string. The only difference between the double quotes and the single quotes is that each one allows the other inside of it. We're going to look at that right next slide. The backtick has some rather special abilities. We will have more on those later. Let's take a closer look at the quotation marks in the strings. As mentioned, in one type of string, you can have quotes of the other kind without any problems. Say here we have two names. Name one is Brian O'Connor. We start with double quotes and we end with double quotes. So in between we can have anything, for instance a single quote, and this time it does not mean begin or end of a string, it's just the simple a single quote. We could also have Dominic Dom Toretto, where we start with a single quote and end with a single quote, and anything inside it are just symbols. Here we have double quote, it's not the end or the beginning of a string, it's just the symbol for a quote. This is nice, but of course if we want to use both kinds, then we have to escape them and use a backslash. For instance, like this, we have the team that is called O'Connor and Dom. So here we start with double quotes and we end with double quotes, and then we use backslashes in front of all the other kind of quotes inside the string to say that we don't mean to start or stop new strings. And actually, this backslash here isn't really necessary because the single quote wouldn't end the double quote here. But this one is, this quote has a backslash because it's just the symbol for a quote inside the string. And this quote here is actually the one that ends the string. Other fun stuff you can do with the with escaping backslash characters, and you can take a closer look in the chapter 5.3 under the section special characters. You can, for instance, use \n for a new line. That's like a line feed, a line break. And of course, this only works in the console. It does not work in HTML. You can insert as many line breaks as you want to. Nothing happens until you actually put in a break tag or something else. The same goes for a tab character here that will indent the text 4 to 8 spaces depending on the setup of the console. And then there's the interesting one here, \u, that works in both in the console and in HTML. The U can be followed by a 4-digit number, for instance 1, 2, 3, 4, or it can be followed by a curly bracket and a number with more than 4 digits. For instance, this example, \u, curly bracket 1F385, curly bracket end. Try to put this in a string that your console log out and see what happens, just for fun. And then, of course, with all these backslash symbols here, there is, what if you just want a backslash? Well, then you need to have another backslash. So the symbol \backslash just means a backslash without escaping anything after it. There is another one where you can have just one backslash, and that is actually not just one backslash, it's always followed by a line break. But you can't see that here. And that allows you to cut a string into multiple lines in the editor. And I think we should just try and take a look at how that would look. So let's say we have a variable here, a long line, where we have the text, a very, 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 very long line of text with that spans across the width of the editor. And this can be a bit annoying with these very long lines. We would like to add a line break here so we can see all of it, but then we get errors because in JavaScript we can't just add a new line in the middle of a string. And if we take a look and if we try to run this in the live server and take here in our strings and open it in the console, we will also see errors here. String literal contains an unescaped line break. It actually tells us that we cannot have line breaks without escaping them. So, okay, let's put in a backslash. Oh, suddenly all the wavy lines disappeared. And we see here, there's no problem. And if we take a look at long line, then it is a very, very long line of text that spans. So this line break here is only in the editor. There's no line break in the resulting string. If we wanted a line break in the resulting string, we should use \n, and then we need another backslash for the new line or the line break in the editor as well. And that would give us a line break here in the text itself as well as a line break in the editor. We don't need both of them. We could skip the line break in the editor and then just have the line break or the new line character here. And this would give us a new line in the string itself, but not in the editor. So 1 \n is for displaying text with line breaks in them, and / with an actual line break is for editing text with line breaks in them. It's complicated, right? So luckily there is a fix, or an easier way we should call it. The template literal is also described in chapter 5.3, and it uses this symbol here that is often referred to as a backtick. It's like a tick and it goes back like the / that goes all the way. The tick goes just some of the way. Actually, the name is either accent acute or accent grave, but as I see it, no one that doesn't write French knows which one is the correct name, and I always confuse them, so I stick with backtick. And you can use that. Say we have an example here. We have two variables, name and drink, that is set to two strings, Peter and Pepsi. And then we console log this string here, the backtick, hello, $, curly bracket, name, that's the variable name up here, curly bracket end, and then some more text. Would you like a $, curly bracket, drink, and this is the name of the variable drink. And more text and end with a backtick. And this $, curly bracket variable name actually inserts the value of that variable in the string. I think it's easier if we see it in the editor. So yeah, let's keep that, and then have our const name would be Peter. That was what it was called, right? Name is Peter and drink is Pepsi. Yes. Peter and const drink is Pepsi. And then console log. I don't need the terminal. Console log. Console log. No, not normal strings. Backticks. Hello, $name. Would you like a $, drink? Question mark. I don't know why there's a strike through. It says that the name is deprecated. I have no idea what that means. I think, but I'll take it as in Visual Studio suggests to me that that is a very bad variable name, and it is. So, never mind. Let's see if it works. It goes here. Hello, Peter. Would you like a Pepsi? So, what we see is if I ask about another variable or another kind of drink, it writes, hello Peter, would you like a Coca-Cola? So this way of creating a string, and by the way, I could also create it as a new string. Let's call it text, and then do like this. So I have one string I create with normal double quotes, and this one I create with these backticks, and then I console log the text. This would give me the exact same results. And by the way, I can also make these symbols into the backticks, and it still works. So I don't have to use $ and curly brackets inside backtick variables. I can just use them for normal text. And this is basically the same as the classic concatenation you might have seen, where we would create a string, start the string, and then end the string. Use plus for concatenation, a variable name, plus for concatenation, a new string that we start and end, and then plus concatenation with another variable, and plus concatenation with yet another string. And all these strings have to begin and end. We have a double quote here and double quote there. We could have single quote here and single quote there. We don't have to use the same for this string as for this one, but never mind. And I don't know, I was so used to this that it took me a long time, more than a year, to get used to this one and find that it was better looking. But now I think it does. It does look better, and it's easier to see. It's not these weird spaces before and after quotation marks here. It looks nicer. And there is another cool feature. You can actually insert line breaks. See, I inserted a line break in the editor. It did not complain. I don't have to use a backslash. And if I look at it out here, there's also a line break in the output. So this one with the backtick, the line break is the same in the editor and in the result. And I can actually have multiple line breaks here if I want to. And it gives me, here it gives me multiple line breaks. And I can even have indentations, different indentations, and there, like this. And it also indents. So I can use tabs and line breaks and lay out the text any way I want to inside the backticks. I think that's nice. It's time that you get a little more experience with the template literal backticks, so do this exercise here, where you create a console log line with template literals that would output something like this. My name is Peter, and then on a new line, I have a cat called Mandu. So a single console log that creates these two lines. And you need to create variables for the name, Peter, the animal type, that is a cat, and the animal name, that is Mandu. So Peter and cat and Mandu should be variables. Then you have the three variables. Then create the console log that will output the result on two lines with a line break there. And when you have that, then run it in the browser, view the result in the console. When you have this result, my name is Peter, I have a cat called Mandu, then edit the variables. Change the name to make it your own name. Change the animal. Maybe you have your own cat called something else. Maybe you have a dog called something. Maybe a dragon. Who knows? Try to change them and view the result. Does it change and does it work? And to make this a little easy to find again, create template HTML and template JS in the exercise folder. And I'm just going to show you how. So if we go here, let's open the terminal. We have the live server running. Let's go here and let's just commit the changes here. We have our strings. Oh, I created that touch file by accident. That's good that I discovered that. So I don't want to add all. I'm just adding the strings. Git add strings, and I can type HTML and strings.js. And I need to spell it correctly, like this. Git status and git commit first string exercise. So now I'm ready to touch my template.html and template.js in the template HTML. Create some random HTML, and just remember, always change the document to something else. Always include the JavaScript. And in the JavaScript, always start with the use strict. So now you do the same. Go here, try this exercise out, pause the video, don't worry, I'll wait for you to finish. So, code away. So you unpaused, and I guess that means that you're done with your exercise and it works. I'll just show you mine. Here's the code, and here is the result. My name is Peter. I have a cat called Mandu. And if I go back to the code here and change it so that it's no longer Peter, but say my name is Hagrid, I have a dragon called Norbert. And I take a look at that in the browser, then I should be able to see my name is Hagrid, I have a dragon called Norbert. It works. And if you have the same, then congrats to you. You could also have done this with this way if you don't want to put the line break inside the console log, and then it would still work, give the same output result. But I think that the cool thing is that you can actually put the line breaks in here. So yeah, I prefer it this way. You might prefer the others. Luckily, there are no rules. I'm pretty happy with this. I should commit to Git. So let's say git add template.html and template.js, git commit, template literals, done. Good. And now I'm ready for the next thing. And the next thing is length and index. We can always get the length of a string just by asking it about its .length. That's a property of a string, the length of the string. So we create a string called name, that's Peter, and then we create another variable called len, that is the name.length. And if we console log that, console first the variable name is then the variable len characters long. This should tell us that Peter is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 characters long. Let's try that. I'm going to back to my strings original here. Lots of old code, that's fine. I'll just add some more. Don't need the terminal. So const the name is still there, it's still Peter. So I don't need to add that. Const len as the name.length. And if I console log, need to remember you should use the backtick. Name is $len characters long. Let's see what happens. And we are not in the template anymore, but in the strings. Peter is 5 characters long. Excellent. So that's how we get the length. Let's just try and change it. Let's try and change the name to something longer. Longer Peter. And then let's see what it says. It says longer Peter is 12 characters long. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 characters including the space. Good. We can always get a single character with square bracket index of the character, square bracket. So if we ask, we say a letter, name index 0, then we would get the first one is of course 0. So the first letter of name is this letter, and that would of course be a P. So let's try that. And const letter is the name 0, and that would then console log the first. Did I write the first? The first, yes. First letter of dollar name is dollar letter. And let's see what it says when it runs. The first letter of longer Peter is L, uppercase L. Let's try to change it so that I'm no longer Peter, but just short Peter. And then it should write the first letter of Peter is P. Let's just try. Let's just for fun. What's the next one? The letter 1 is of course E, and so on and so forth. Cool. I think you should try something like these. Take this short and easy to remember name, create this variable const name, say Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore with spaces and everything, and then write some lines that will help you answer these questions. What is the total number of characters including spaces? So you can just write something like, let's say you calculate, let me show you how you can do this. Total number of characters including spaces. First, of course, you have the name. Oh, I'm getting confused with all this. Let me take all of this and put it in a comment there, and then create a new name. Wulfric Brian Dumbledore. And then the first question I should answer is, what is the total number of characters including spaces? So I'll just say, I'll create a variable for that. Total is the length. I'll console log the total number of characters is total, like this, and then do the same for all the rest and see if you can find the answers, the correct answers for this. And just pause the video and come back when you're done. Welcome back. And now you probably think that I'm going to show you the solutions for these exercises, but I'm not. Haha. You have to check them for yourself or find somebody else who also did them and see if they came to the same result. I'm going straight on to the next part, which is methods, string methods. We saw the property length, and string also has a lot of methods. A method that's kind of like a function that belongs to an object, and string is actually a kind of an object. Even though we distinguished between strings and objects, then strings are also a special kind of object that works like an object most of the time. Here's an example of a method called trim, where we have one string with some space and some text and some more space and some text and a new line and some more space. And then we have another string that we define as the trim version of the first string. And I ask you, what will string 2 contain? And try to console log it and see what actually happens to it. Try it now. I'll just pause the video and come back. You tried it? Did you get the result? Was it what you expected? Let me show what I got. I have the strings here, and I'm just going to console log string2 and see what is the result here. There is space here. It seems like if I highlight it, if I try to copy, the spaces inside the string, they are kept, all of them. But the space before is gone, and the space after, and even the new line character is removed. So trim removes spaces in the beginning and the end, and that goes for spaces as well as new lines, maybe even tabs. Let's try it out. Let's add a tab character there, and let's see. Yeah, tabs are removed as well. Does it also work if it's an backtick here, where we actually indent it and say there is, and then we add a new lines and some spaces, space here, and some more spaces and some more new lines, and then we end it. Does it still work? Let's try it out. Everything in the beginning is removed, and everything in the end is removed, but not what was in between. So trim trims the ends of the text, like trimming the hedges. It can sometimes be hard to see if we have extra spaces at the beginning or end of a string, especially if it's just one space. And we can see here, okay, we can remove them with trim, it removes them, but maybe we are not using trim, maybe we're using something else, and we want to see this space. And my personal favorite trick is to console log the string with an underscore like this, before and after. That makes it very easier to see if there is a string or not. And what I mean is, like, I console log it here, whereas an underscore, and then the variable, and another underscore. Because then I would be able to see if there was a space. And right now, let's just get rid of some of these. There I can see the underscore is right next to the text, so there are no spaces. If I had a text where there's just a single space, say string, for instance, if I for some weird reason had added an extra space here, then I would be able to see there's a space. I can see it now. So just a tip, not anything you have to do, it's just a nice trick that you can do. There are other methods, and some take parameters. For instance, this one here, substring, takes two parameters, start and end. If we have this full name variable, Peter Hieronymus Lind, and yes, that is my actual middle name. It's not just a weird middle name I've made up for the purpose of this exercise. Absolutely not. Of course not. Why would I even do something like that? Then we have the first name, where we say, okay, the first name, say Peter, is the full name dot substring, where we start at 0 and end at 5. So we cut out, we take a sub part of that string from index 0 to index 5. Or do we go from index 0 and then 5 characters? So will it be Peter, or will it be Peter and a space? That's a big question. Think about it and then try it, and I will try it as well and see what happens. So const full name would be Peter. Hieronymus Lin. And my first name would be full name dot substring. Note that there are other methods called sub and substr. Don't use those. Use the substring 0,5 and console log that. And I'll use the trick here with underscore before and then the first name and an underscore after, just to see what it first name is. This should help me. Take a look. First name is Peter underscore, no space. Interesting. So if I say 6, that wasn't what I wanted. Where did it go? Then there's a space. So it takes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it stops. And then here, of course, it takes 5, and then it stops before number 6. That's nice to know. Sometimes parameters are optional. Say in this substring start, comma, end, we can omit the end, and we will get to the very end of the string. Okay, so if we don't use substring 0, but something else, say we have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 16, 17 here. You can see here, down here in the bottom of the screen, you can see how many characters you've selected in Visual Code. Helps a lot. So if I say 17 and then nothing, that should give me just my last name. You know what? I'm not going to change it. I'm going to keep this, and then I'm going to create a last name that is just from position 17, and console log that. Last name is, and I'm adding the underscores here just to see if I get any spaces. Yeah, it just goes to the very end. So from 17 and then just go on to the very end. That's cool. So you should try this substring thing out a bit. Take and do more exercises with Albus, Percival, Wulfric, Bran, Dumbledore that you already have. Figure out the values you need in substring to get Albus, to get Dumbledore, and can you do it with just the one parameter, or do you need 2 of them? Wulfric without spaces, Wulfric with spaces, if you just want Ian, the last part of Brian, or if you want just Bus, the last part of Albus. What should start and end be in substring? Try these out. Pause the video and come back when you have done them. Welcome back. And no, I'm not going to show you the solutions. Ha! You have to check them out for yourself. Confer with some of your classmates. Do you use the same numbers? Do you get the same results with these numbers? And that concludes strings, the very basics of strings, how we create them, how we use quotes, how we use backslashes, how we can use backticks, and how we can use linked property and square brackets to get a specific character, a specific letter, if we call it that, and how we can use some of the methods, for instance, trim and substring, to cut out pieces of strings. There's much more to learn about strings, But what you really need to know is how to read the documentation so that you can go into details about strings and really understand what they are doing without me having to explain all of it. So the next presentation will probably be about reading the documentation.